Hey friends, Stephanie here with Festive Creations by Stephanie. I am going to show you how I make a bow using the EZ Bowmaker and multiple ribbons. So come on in and say hey, and let's get started. I'm going to bring you down here on the table so you can get a bird's eye view of what's going on. So for this bow, I'm actually using 4 different ribbon, and it will be a patriotic bow. But I want to tell you that sometimes we get a little hung up on the ribbon. Don't get too stressed out about the ribbon and different patterns. You can definitely mix and match if the colors all make sense together. But for bows, I like to use different things to secure them or tie them off. My favorite go-to is this right here. I use a paddle wire. It's 22 gauge floral wire. You can find it in a lot of your floral shops, craft stores like Hobby Lobby, Michael's, that kind of thing. And I can order these on Amazon. A lot of people like to use zip ties, and I will definitely use zip ties if I have a huge stack of ribbon that I don't want to risk it coming apart, or maybe my hands can't hold it all. I'll also use the zip ties if I know it's going to be outside getting whipped around, and those tend to be a little bit stronger. And then another thing that people will use is pipe cleaners to secure their bows. So I also have the luxury of having a 3 spool ribbon holder. And I'll leave a link down below on where you can get your ribbons holder as well. But let's get started, and I'm going to start with opening my ribbon. So for this bow, I'm going to be using 4 different ribbon, 3 rolls of 2.5 inch ribbon, and 1 roll of 7/8 inch ribbon. How fun is that? So let's get these lined up. And what I do is I'll bring them over here on my spool holder, and I'm going to start with the one I want on top. So that's going to be the furthest away from me. Then the next one, then the next one, followed by the one I want to be on the bottom. Now that I have these all lined up, I'm going to start making my bow. Of course, I use my Fisker shears, and I will tell you they're my favorite scissors. I've had them for almost 8 years, and they've never been sharpened. And of course, the only thing that I use them on is this right here, my ribbon, my wired ribbon. So my husband got yelled at one time because he tried to use my scissors on something other than ribbon. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one like that, right? Okay, so if you want to make a bow with tails, decide how long you want your tails. Do you want them to be 10 inches? Do you want them to be 12 inches? Do you want tails at all? Maybe you don't want tails on your bow. You just want a nice round bow. That's totally up to you and what look you're going for. For me, this one is going to have some tails, but I don't need super long tails. So I'm going to do about 10 inches. First thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to dovetail the end of it. So I just simply folded it together and cut it at a V shape. I'm going to bring this out to the about 10 inches. And right here in between these 2 dowel rods, I'm going to pinch this together. And as I'm going down between the dowel rods, I'm going to twist my ribbon so that the back side is now facing up. And on this ribbon, it's not as noticeable because it's the same color on both sides. But once we get to the pattern ribbon, it'll make a little bit more difference. I'm going to come out to the 6 inch mark on my EZ Bowmaker with a loop. And as I'm going down in the center, I'm twisting So I'm always doing the ugly side, or the, yeah, that's what I call it, the ugly side up. And now you see my loop is at the 6-inch mark, and you see I have a nice firm loop. Depending on the ribbon that you're using is also going to make a huge difference on the quality of your finished product. So if you're using a ribbon that doesn't have good wires in it, that the fabric is not as good of quality, you're not going to get a good, firm, voluptuous loop like we have here. So the quality of the ribbon makes a huge difference. If you're frustrating with making bows, try going to a better quality of ribbon. For this bow, I'm going to make 2 loops on each side on the red. So this red, we're going to make 2 loops at 6 inches on each side. And on this final loop, I don't need to twist it because I want my pretty side up, and that's going to now become a part of our tail. So I'm going to trim that off, and we're done with that first ribbon. Let's bring that next ribbon, and we're going to start the same thing. We're going to measure out about 10 inches. Let me go ahead and dovetail this. I'm going to fold the 2 ends together and cut that at an angle. So now I have a nice deep V shape, and not everyone does it the same. That's okay. As I'm going in, I'm pinching, twisting, and there we go. This one's actually going to be the same 6-inch and 6-inch on this side. So I'm making these the same size as the red. There's different recipes for your bows. You can do them, experiment with different size loops, pinch, twist, and as I'm going, I'm just pushing that down towards the bottom. Pinch and twist. And if you're never sure whether or not you've got a good loop or the same size going on, hold them up next to each other. You can tell whether or not they're the same size. So right now, we have quite the stack going on. You can see I now have 4 loops on each side, 2 red, 2 stars. Push that down in the center. I'm going to measure this out to that 10-inch mark, and we're going to cut that off. All right, let's go back over here, and let's bring our next ribbon up. So this one, look at how beautiful that is. So I'm taking where that's creased, fold it over, and we've got our V shape. This one's got some beautiful stars in there, right? Those stripes. We're gonna come right on top here, come out to that 10-inch, and this time we're not gonna go out to the same length. We're gonna come in about 1 inch from the first one. So we're going to bring it in about 1 inch. So we're going to layer it just a little bit shorter than the layer before. And you notice I'm not getting all worried about a tape measure and seeing exactly what width it is. But when you're making bows, this is a great way to tell how much you're spending on your ribbon. So what I like to do, or what I used to do, is when I purchased a roll of ribbon from a vendor, I would take my roll of ribbon and I would say, this roll of ribbon cost me $6. And then I would break it up even more. It's 10 yards. So I would say that that was 60 cents a yard. Or if I wanted to break it down by foot. Now I can tell because these are 6-inch loops. So there's 12 inches, 12 inches, 12 inches, 12 inches. So each loop is equivalent to 12 inches on the bottom. Then the next one is 5 inches, or 10. So I'm using, I'm using about a foot of ribbon per loop. Now, guess what? I can take my calculation and multiply that times the total number of loops that I made, or how many inches or feet I made, and voila. I now know how much my base cost is for my ribbon that I used in my bow, and I have a way to calculate it. If you haven't yet played with 7/8 or even 5/8 inch ribbon, it really brings a whole new feel to your bows. So don't be afraid to try something new. And this again is going to be a little bit shorter than the one before. So I'm going to bring this one in so I can see the bow or the ribbon behind it. And this one I'm going to do 3 loops on each side. Twist as I'm going down. Down in here, twist, push, and then on the final one, I'm going to leave the pretty side up. Now, I know for a fact this bow is going to be going outdoors, so this is one of those instances where I'm going to be using a zip tie, and to be real honest, it's pretty thick. It's a nice thick bow. So let's take this, and I'm going to take a zip tie and slide it underneath my ribbon in between those 2 poles. So I'm going to go in kind of like at this angle underneath the bow itself. And bring it around. One on this side, one on that side. Start zip tying that together. If you can hear that, the teeth clanging in there when you zip tie it, you know you're on the right spot. And of course, before I tighten this all the way down, I'm going to make sure that all of my ribbon is laying nice and pretty. So I want to make sure I don't have any crinkles in there where it's twisted, because once I get that zip tie on there, I'm locked in for good. I am going to pinch that together nicely and pull my zip tie tight, but not too tight, because I might have a nice pretty bow, but how am I going to attach it to whatever? So if I'm going to use this bow and attach it to a mailbox, to a lantern, to whatever, I can't do that because I have that zip tie is tight around the bow. So at this point, I'm going to take either a pipe cleaner and slide it under that zip tie, or I'll take that 22 gauge floral wire and I will cut a piece as long as I think I need. So if I'm going around a big pole, I need a longer piece. And honestly, let me get my wire cutters. If I am hanging something outside where it's going to be in the direct wind, sometimes I'll double this so that I have 2 wires. Right now, I have bows hanging up at our community firehouse that have been there for almost, 10 months. They've been there for 10 months. So, the system works, trust me. All right, let me give you the overhead view here for a second and I'll show you what I'm doing. So here we go. So here is and so I've run that wire underneath the zip tie before I've tightened down the zip tie completely. So I'm just going to now tighten that all the way. And once again, just kind of make sure my ribbon is in the right spot before I give it the old death grip. Then once I have this completely tightened, I'm going to trim off that excess zip tie. I have my wire underneath there that I can use to attach it to whatever it's going to get attached to. And now it's time to fluff the bow. All right, so to spread out the loops on the bow, I will tell you, if you struggle with that, it's sometimes, no, it's always easier if it's attached to something. So if you have something that you can attach it to, whether it be your wreath itself or actually sometimes I'll attach it to like a pole, just something to hang on to, because it will give you more freedom to move your hands around and stretch it out. So I like to start at the bottom, and when I do, I'll show you with the top one. I like to take my fingers and run it right along the wires and just kind of pull up and away from the bow itself. So I'm just kind of starting in the center and pulling up. Look at how beautiful that loop comes out when I just kind of pull up and give it some body. And I'm going to do that on each individual loop. And I kind of twist it so it's not gathered or bunched right there in the center where it's attached with the zip tie. So just kind of pull up and away. And as I go down layers, there we go. And now we have a beautiful patriotic bow to hang on whatever we choose to hang on. And then I will go back and dovetail the tips here on the opposite side that I haven't done yet. Bow number 1 for the season is done. All right, go make a bow. And let's see what you can do. Remember, practice, practice, practice. And you too will be making gorgeous bows. And don't forget to, the quality of the ribbon matters. The quality matters. All right, guys, go make some bows.